country. As the night went on, I realized that Hillary Clinton had lost. I was devastated. The next morning, I woke up to these articles. 54%
of white women had voted for Republican candidate Donald Trump. And the media was out to condemn them. Now, the media was picking up on this gap, the gap between how white women voted and how other American women voted. As you can see, black women overwhelmingly supported Hillary Clinton at 94%, with Latina women supporting her at 69%. Compared to them, white women had only voted for Hillary Clinton at 46%. Now, if you haven't figured it out yet, I'm a card-carrying Democrat. And as a liberal white woman, I was confused. But more than that, I was curious. What made these women who looked like me vote for a candidate who time and time again have been labeled a misogynist? Well, I was determined to find out. And as Donald Trump was being inaugurated into office in 2016, I took off on a research project of my own. So the first thing I wanted to look at was at white women's various identities. It was obvious to me that the country had assumed that white women would vote based on their gender identity. However, I thought that other identities might be at play. I decided to use an in-depth interview method. So we've all taken a survey where none of the actual answers match up with what we really think our reply would be. I was hoping that this more conversational style approach would really let me get at why white women identified with Donald Trump, if they did.
So I began to interview women from different parts of the country. They were of all different ages, but they had two things
in common. They were all white, and they had all voted for Donald Trump. When I put out the call for interviews, I was actually really surprised at who responded. They were people from my hometown of Charlotte, North Carolina. They were relatives of my friends, and they were people from this very college campus. They came from a wide variety of occupational backgrounds. They were agricultural workers and small business owners. They were students and they were teachers. I was quickly realizing that they were my neighbors, and I'm here to tell you that they are yours. As much as people in the US like to vilify people who have different political backgrounds than ourselves, they're still the same people that sit with us, that stand with us in the grocery line. So the thing that's different with them is they have different lived experiences that have shaped their different political values. Today, I want to talk to you about those political values. They've manifested themselves in three different ways. First, in what political issues white women care about. Second, in how they perceive different candidates. And third, in their partisan identity. But before we can get into any of that, I have to let you know something. These women view themselves as hard workers. They think of both themselves and their families as hard workers, and this identity has really shaped all of those political values that I just told you about. They've also shaped which political issues white women care about. So the women that I spoke to cared about two different things. First, immigration, and second, the American economy.
They saw these things often as overlapping and intertwining.
No matter where women lived, they thought of undocumented immigrants as doing something criminal and wrong. I had a retired school teacher in Maryland tell me, "I just feel like the laws in our country should be obeyed. I've always done what I'm supposed to do." While a single mother all the way down in Texas said, "Come into our country respectfully, follow the law, be like every other person who is living here legally does, and you're welcome." And a real estate agent all the way in New York said, "We're all immigrants, but there has to be a process and people just can't walk in here illegally." So as you can see, it doesn't matter if they came from a border state or not, they viewed undocumented immigrants as rule breakers. And what do rule breakers do? They take from us. So cultural sociologists Ackerberg and Houtman tell us that the working class may dislike immigrants because they see them as competition in the labor market. While not all of the women that I spoke to were part of the working class, almost all of them thought of the American economy as a major issue. So they really believed in this idea of the American dream. Now, what that basically means is that if we just try hard enough, people in this country can accomplish anything. They saw this as being taken away from them. A student down in Arizona told me, "I think you should work for what you want. It's not fair for the people who work hard and then get half of what they worked for taken away by people who didn't work as hard." So as you can see, this identity of being a hard worker continues to come up again and again. It continues to come into play with how white women perceive different candidates. They saw Donald Trump as a hard worker. He was someone who had worked his way up in the business world, and his business expertise would be vital for the American economy. However, they thought of Hillary Clinton as the antithesis of this. In fact, they described her in what I like to call the 3 S's: sketchy, shady, and scheming. They thought of her and Bill Clinton as this immoral political powerhouse, and they thought that she would be willing to do anything to get to the presidency. I had some women even imply that she would be willing to do something illegal. I had one woman tell me, "The Clintons have been around. They became very wealthy while they were in government, and government doesn't pay very well." So, time and time again, these women would talk about the Clintons' legacy of corruption, but very few of them actually mentioned specific scandals. I was sure that I was going to hear about Benghazi or the email server scandal. However, very few women actually mentioned these. Another area in which white women thought that the candidates diverged was around the issue of family values. I had one woman tell me, "Family to me is everything, and without it, I don't know that you could have this success." So these women saw Donald Trump as quite literally combining success with family. I had a small business owner from North Carolina tell me that she liked how Donald Trump included his family in his business ventures. As a small business owner, she was really hoping to keep her own business within the family. So these women really liked that Donald Trump had kept in touch with his children despite multiple divorces. They really picked up on his relationship with Ivanka Trump. I had a woman from New York compare and contrast Chelsea's relationship with Hillary Clinton to Ivanka's relationship with Donald Trump. She saw Ivanka Trump as a self-starter, as someone who had made it in the fashion industry by herself, while she labeled Chelsea Clinton as riding on her mother's coattails. Another area in which these identities of being a mother and being a wife continued to come into play was around the topic of Bill Clinton's infidelity. So this was brought up to me over and over again, and the women that I spoke with really thought that Hillary Clinton had only stayed with Bill Clinton because of political reasons. And they saw this as a complete power move for her. They also thought that it made her a poor role model for her daughter, Chelsea Clinton. I had one woman tell me, "I can understand standing by your husband when he's struggling, but he's slapping you in the face. You're raising a daughter, and you're showing your daughter the wrong image to make. I would not have allowed my child to see that." So as you see, even though Hillary Clinton is a white woman, a mother, and a wife, these women that I was speaking with still had trouble identifying with her. So despite their deep dislike of Hillary Clinton, none of the women I spoke with actually identified as part of the far or alt-right. In fact, they were all over the political spectrum, with many of them identifying as moderates. Despite having voted for the Republican Party, they view them in ways that I wouldn't have expected. They saw them as judgmental and stodgy and old-fashioned. I had one woman even tell me, "I don't know how the Tea Party group hijacked the whole Republican Party. I mean, it just seems that you can't be a moderate Republican or a moderate Democrat anymore. It just seems very unpopular. So they really had this desire for bipartisanship. They wanted to see politicians reach across the aisle and work together. And as someone who votes on the opposite side of the aisle, I was actually really relieved to hear this. It was reassuring to know that these white women that I was speaking to wanted unity in this time of division. So, despite everything that I've learned throughout this research, my biggest point is that there is a deep power in listening. At the end of almost each and every one of my conversations, the woman on the other end of the line would say, "Thank you. Thank you for just listening." They hadn't felt comfortable talking about their political values in their classrooms, in their offices, and in their communities in general. And instead of arguing with them point by point, I had taken the time to just listen. And in that time, I had learned about their greatest fears and their deepest hopes for both themselves and their families. Now, don't get me wrong, politics is personal. When I found out that Donald Trump had been elected into office, I felt like both he and his supporters hated me and my friends. Though I still don't agree with a lot of the political ideology of these women, I can now better understand where they're coming from. So the liberal movement really centers around this idea of sharing experiences and understanding identities. However, we don't often offer up this space to our conservative neighbors. There are days where I don't want to make this space. The world is divisive, and there's a lot of stuff happening in Washington, D.C. that I don't agree with. But when I look back to who I was before this project began, I realized that my attitude was often not productive. So I want to leave you with this question tonight. How do we create a new vision of the future if we don't even understand half of America? I don't have a fix-all solution for you. Just listening isn't going to solve the deep systematic issues that plague this nation. However, it is a start. And in this time of division, we could all use a starting point to unify around. Thank you.